Lasting peace, that's not what Donald Trump is about. He couldn't give a damn about peace. We need to bring ICE agents before the Senate. They need their masks off and they need to be held accountable for their actions. We can't just blow past this moment and be like, all right, abolish ICE. Even if we do that, you need to hold these people accountable.
If you get elected to Congress, will you commit to filing an article of impeachment against Donald Trump? I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. I'm here with Kat Abughazaleh. She is running for Congress in Illinois' 9th Congressional District. You probably recognize her because she has been on the front lines of the protests against ICE on the ground all the time, and that is why I'm so excited to be joined today by Kat. Kat, welcome to Lights On.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Now, I asked you, I said we were going to do this interview last week, and obviously Chicago is in the news all the time. Donald Trump is trying to militarize your city, just like he's trying to militarize so many blue states across this country. And we're definitely going to talk a lot about the illegal authoritarian plans that he has, more broadly speaking. But tell me what is going on right now in Chicago.
Yeah, so Chicago has always been a favorite boogeyman for the right. And that goes all the way back over a century when it was the center of the American labor movement. And this is no different. Trump has wanted to target Chicago since before he became president. It's actually the only place he's had to cancel a rally because he got scared of protesters. And so that's why he's been sticking ICE on us. But the problem is Chicago is ready. This is actually a place that Tom Homan hates because we know our rights. We have had people in my own neighborhood of Rogers Park be abducted just in the middle of the day from people with no identification. Someone actually was shot with a pepper ball gun right behind my house yesterday. And so we have had patrols of our neighbors just going up and down the streets, determined to let people know when ICE is there. And a lot of people who have 3D printers have 3D printed whistles, which are being used a lot in Chicago. But ICE is escalating its actions against people that they're detaining, many of whom are U.S. citizens, many of whom have never committed a crime, and also in the way they're detaining them at the Broadview ICE facility. A lot of people saw a video of myself getting thrown to the ground by an ICE agent. That was actually the third time it's happened because ICE is also escalating its actions against protesters, and they've gotten more and more violent every single week. Now, a judge has made a ruling saying that they can't, for instance, hit protesters with their car. How controversial. But we'll see if ICE actually follows that. What we need is transparency and accountability. And the courts have been clear. Trump has no standing to invade our city.
Yeah, he absolutely has no standing, Kat. And let's just start with that video of you being thrown to the ground. And I know when that happened, one of your intentions was to not just highlight obviously the abuse and assault of you that has happened and the abuse and assault of so many protesters that has happened, but God knows what's happening to the people that are behind the bars of that detention facility. This is what they're doing to journalists and activists. What are they doing to the people who they are detaining?
I genuinely felt so much relief when you said that. Sometimes it kind of feels like Upton Sinclair when he wrote The Jungle, where he said he aimed for the hearts of Americans and he hit them in the stomach. And The Jungle, which was about workers' rights and the abuse of workers in the early 20th century, was actually the reason that the FDA was founded, because people were so horrified by the conditions of the meatpacking industry. And what a lot of people have seen on the ground in Broadview, and especially in that video, I mean, it's striking. A man twice my size is picking up a little blonde woman and throwing her to the ground with a force of a giant sack of flour. But that's what they're willing to do to us on camera. You got it right on the head. What are they doing in that facility? They have boarded up the windows with plywood. They will not elected officials inspect the facility, as those officials are allowed to by law. And they're escalating week after week. That video was actually the third time I have been thrown by ICE. 3 times. They love to throw me in particular. They love to drag my friend by his clothes. I don't know why they choose these specific actions for specific people, but they're able to act with impunity. And I've had people ask, are you going to sue them? How? We don't know who these men are. They're wearing masks. They don't have badges. They're wearing sunglasses, oftentimes in the dead of night.
You could sue the agency, though. You could sue DHS.
But I don't know what agency they work for. They could possibly just be a guy that woke up and said, you know what, I'm going to go to Spirit Halloween and pick up a Call of Duty costume.
I know, it's
and
very
then
dangerous.
Go hit some women.
We don't even know. There's no way to distinguish. I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's incredibly dangerous. And Kat, this is part of, I'm gonna segue right now because I got to get your thought on this. You're running as a candidate for Congress. One thing that my viewers know very well is that I have as much ire, to be honest with you, for the sitting Democrats right now as I do for the Republicans, because we know who the Republicans are. We know that they are cowardly fascists who are backing an authoritarian wannabe. But the Democrats posture themselves as pro-democracy. They posture themselves as the opposition, and yet they are not taking the action that is required in this moment to stand up to Donald Trump. And don't tell me the argument that you don't have the votes. It's not your job to honor your oath on the days that you have the votes. It's your job every single day of the week. And just this past Friday, I had a show that was literally all about treason. Donald Trump is actively committing treason. When he had that meeting at Quantico, told all of the flag officers that he dangerously summoned from around the world, that there was a war from within, that we should use our American cities as training grounds, and then openly lies to courts in what his own judicial appointees are calling simply untethered to the fact arguments about the conditions on our streets. This is levying war against the United States and its people. Two organizations, Citizens Impeachment, which is this wonderful grassroots lobbying effort, getting members of Congress to back impeachment, and Free Speech for People, which is run by constitutional scholars, constitutional lawyers, have updated their calls for impeachment to include treason. And it has now been, even two members of Congress have responded as of Friday to endorse these articles themselves. Isn't it time, Kat, right now for Democrats in power to be speaking out against these impeachable offenses and taking action on them?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, that's part of why I ran. So my background is I covered the far right for organizations like Media Matters and Mother Jones and Zateo News. And I feel like our leaders have a complete illiteracy, not just in modern communication, but also in understanding far right narratives and conspiracy theories. I mean, all of the people I used to cover as a reporter now run our country. And it's like, look, I get you don't have the votes right now. That doesn't mean you throw up your hands and say we can't do anything. It feels like Democratic leadership is allergic to the idea of leverage, allergic to the idea that you shouldn't compromise on basic human rights.
Mm-hmm.
One example I always give is when Elon Musk marched his army of teenage incels to the Treasury Department, every Democrat should have been standing arm in arm in front of every entrance and exit to the Treasury and called their bluff, because fascists are weak. And especially early on, if you call their bluff, like Chris Van Hollen did in El Salvador, they'll probably fold. Or you'll make a national scandal that will piss off a lot of voters. So I've been trying to show that in my own campaign about action over just words. I've been going to Broadview just as a regular citizen. I'd be doing this whether or not I'm running for Congress. But the first week I was there, not a single elected official or even candidate was there. The next week, someone else, actually one of my opponents, showed up, and the next week even more. And then as of last week, we had Senators Tammy Duckworth and Dick Durbin show up. And
you're giving them the model that is the motto for my show from Timothy Snyder's book. You stand out, and then it seems scary at first, and then others see your lead and they follow you.
Right. And it's like one of these things where people are realizing, oh, wow, even like the most cynical political operatives have to look at this and be like, wow, that makes people want to vote for me. I mean, we actually had so many donations come in that day that video of ICE throwing me to the ground went viral that it felt icky. And so we donated $10,000 to the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, Sanctuary Evanston, Sanctuary Niles, and the National Lawyers Guild. And I am begging Democratic leaders to not only take action in these ways, but to obstruct this administration, even in impolite ways. Break quorum, call a point of order every 30 seconds, and also to use their resources to fill in those material gaps right now. Like, we don't need to spend $20 million making Joe Rogan in a lab, but for the left, we need to be opening food banks and funding local clinics, because I promise you, even in the purple and red areas of this country, when people can't get access to their Medicare, when they can't afford groceries, but they remember your no strings attached effort to help, they will remember that.
Yeah, mutual aid is a huge part of resistance right now. And I just to stick on this point of impeachment, and what they do, they do this, just throwing so much shit at the fan tactic that the response of the opposition almost seems to be that the more they do, the less we react, or the less we invoke the Constitution. With the impeachment, for example, any member of Congress, any member of Congress in the minority could file an article of impeachment and force a vote on it any day of the week. Does not have to be a majority member, does not have to be a committee member. Representative Al Green did this one time so far, filed an article, which was his second article of impeachment, in particular this one for the strike against Iran, and forced a vote on it. Only 79 Democrats voted to further his impeachment article. Can you believe that, Kat? 128 voted with MAGA Republicans to table the article of impeachment. Why are more Democrats not supporting this?
It's this idea that we have to like cozy up with the far right. And look, I grew up Republican. I talk about this a lot. I grew up in like a very, very Reagan Republican household. And there is nothing more convincing to people. Like, you're never going to out Republican or Republican. The way you convince people is actually believing in something and actually standing by those beliefs. We have Republicans in my district, which goes out to rural Illinois, that contact us and they say, I don't know if I agree with everything you believe, but I think you actually believe it. And I think you're actually a fighter. And so now I'm curious. Now I want to come and meet you. Now I want to come to your campaign office or your campaign event and learn more. Or I'm struggling and I know I can come to your office to get baby formula when my paycheck hasn't come yet. Like that. It's the answer is not trotting around Liz Cheney. It's actually standing for something.
Yeah, you and I have that background in common. We also both went to GW, which is a great school. But I am also a former Trump supporter. I worked on the man's campaign in 2016. I have come full circle and had a total awakening. But I, like you, grew up in a moderate Republican household. And that's what the appeal was, especially when I was subjected to that Fox News propaganda and believed it,
right?
And believed that Trump was a savior for this country. Such a sickening thought now. But it was that notion that they fought for you. And then they committed to the fight.
And it's also what, sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's just the Democrats seem so oblivious to their base and to what their base wants.
Right. You can't abandon your base. But also, one thing that I say a lot is that the effects of ignorance are so negative, but ignorance itself is completely value neutral. You don't know what you don't know. And there will always be people who are bigoted and suck. But there are a lot more people who think they're doing what's best for their family because they live in bubbles of misinformation that people like Rupert Murdoch have created. And so they are told that you're being responsible. They are being played by the fear center of their brain. You know, when the little puncture that I needed was when I was 14, we moved to Tucson, Arizona, and it was a lot less economically segregated than where I grew up in Dallas. And I had friends who were so much smarter than me who couldn't go to college even with a full ride because they couldn't take on the extra costs or they had to help take care of their family. And I was like, maybe Ronald Reagan wasn't right about everything. And at that point, Trump was coming on the scene and my parents and I did not like him. We were like, maybe Marco Rubio is going to save us, which is laughable now. But you just kind of need that puncture. And right now, a lot of those votes are on the table. And you don't get it by trying to out Republicans. You get it by being sincere and actually taking action. Strongly worded letters just don't cut it.
No, they absolutely don't cut it. And people see, I mean, that's why you're getting so much support, Kat, is because people see your authenticity. They see that you're the real deal. They see you on the streets protesting and, you know, being willing to be thrown to the ground to stand up for human rights. And it's just like we're not stupid. We know the real deal and we know platitudes and posturing. And that's, I mean, if anything is going to save us, and if anything is going to give these Democrats a hope of winning back the midterms with Donald Trump openly trying to rig them in his favor to hold on to power, it's got to be authenticity and actually doing the work.
Would you believe that when I was a creator of the DNC and then realized very quickly that I was token Palestinian and would be given zero access, I had multiple Democratic consultants ask me, because my brand has been known as authentic when it's just me communicating how I usually do and how I'd want to be communicated to. I had multiple Democratic consultants ask me, so how can we make authenticity? And it's like, wow, you are fundamentally misunderstanding the thing you are trying to achieve.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's really sad. It's really sad. You just mentioned that you're Palestinian. This has been something that I have not been silent on. It's absolutely sickening what the Palestinian people endured in the wake of October 7th. To me, it's sickening what the Israeli people endured at the hands of Benjamin Netanyahu, who used this entire war as a political cover for his own corruption and crimes, much like his fascist friend Donald Trump. And of course, they are out there today celebrating this quote unquote peace deal. Thank God the hostages that survived this nightmare are returned to their family. Thank God there is some reprieve for the Palestinian people for now. I would like to get your thoughts, and God knows I have mine, about the notion that Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu would be heralded as champions of peace.
I would love if this is a permanent ceasefire. I would love that. It would bring me not just joy, but hope. It is hard to believe the man that wants to turn Gaza into his own hotel, that uses my ethnicity as a slur against people, calling Chuck Schumer, I think he called him the most famous Palestinian in the world, using that as like a nonsensical slur of Netanyahu, who is advocating for at the very least ethnic cleansing, but has been on board with what almost every human rights organization across the world has called a genocide, that their first priority is peace. I struggle to believe it. And I think a lot of times in America, if you go to any other country, people will be like, damn, you guys really think you're the center of the world. And we do. And a lot of times when we talk about lasting peace in the region, it's American politicians saying that we should have a two-state solution, a one-state solution, this solution or that solution. We need Palestinian statehood. We need recognition of Palestinian statehood so the actual solution can be made by Palestinians and Israelis. I have the very controversial position that I think every civilian deserves to live a safe life, that no child should go to bed hungry, that no one should be fearful of bombs being dropped on their homes. And that goes for any flag you're under, Israeli or Palestinian. And frankly, someone came to me and said, you could have your grandfather's hotel back, but you would be displacing 300 people. I would say no, because trauma begets trauma. We have seen this, especially like my friends who have family members who were in the Holocaust, my own family who were expelled in the Nakba. Creating more trauma does not help anyone. But lasting peace, that's not what Donald Trump is about. He couldn't give a damn about peace. He wants to use this as his real estate development, and he wants to continue ethnic cleansing. And if anyone who committed war crimes, Hamas or IDF officials, anyone who committed war crimes are not held accountable, then there is no path for peace.
Absolutely. I 100% agree that the notion that either Benjamin Netanyahu or Donald Trump can be held to their word, much like Vladimir Putin, who has signed so many treaties that absolutely mean nothing because this is what authoritarians do. Their word is good for nothing. Donald Trump is a serial liar. We could take this back to how we started this conversation about him lying about war-ravaged cities like yours. The words mean nothing. And look at the business interest. Look at his son-in-law with a $2 billion investment from the Saudi government out of the last administration, and God knows how many new business deals with Middle Eastern governments as he quote unquote brokers peace. It's a sickening thought to think that these individuals that have said all of the terrible things and done all the terrible things that you mentioned would be in charge of the future of a population that has been so disabused of its human rights.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the fact that people in Gaza had nowhere to go. This wasn't in the case of many wars throughout history where you can at least flee. No, you were stuck there. You have no freedom of movement. And that goes for Palestinians all over that region and in other Middle Eastern countries too. My father was born stateless in Kuwait. And so many Palestinians struggled to get citizenship in Middle Eastern countries. And even when they did, they were second-class citizens. This is not just an Israel problem. This is a problem of refugees, which is something we see in Sudan, in Yemen, refugees being disabused of their rights. And we don't do anything to fix the harms we've caused. We can't just have a peace deal. We have to rebuild Gaza. We have to have lasting peace through recognition of Palestinian statehood. And that way negotiations can be made on the terms of the people who are actually living in these conditions, not people in a totally different country who have financial interests.
Absolutely. I had a list of questions when I told my viewers I was bringing you on that they gave to me. I just want to circle back a little bit to the issues on the ground, because there was a ruling just over the weekend that rolled back a little bit the block to Donald Trump's attempts to bring in the National Guard into Chicago. They are not in the city, but they are allowed to stay at the base outside of the city in Illinois. These are the troops that were summoned from Texas and others within Illinois. I want to touch on that, just the status of him trying to weaponize our National Guard in places where they are not needed. Also, there's been a lot of questioning of the level to which the Illinois State Police, now this is under Pritzker, and Pritzker outwardly seems like a great advocate, but yet it seems like the Illinois State Police has been assisting ICE, or has not been completely on the side of the people and the protesters in this, federal overreach. What are your thoughts on just where we stand with all of the different law enforcement agencies in this power play?
Yeah, I mean, as for the second question, a bunch of advocates and activists have been in contact with Governor Pritzker's team to display what's happening on the ground. And what we've heard and what I've seen, although I think there is a lot that could improve, is this is an effort to make sure that ICE doesn't have total control over what is happening to protesters. At the same time, we shouldn't be operating on ICE's terms. And in pretty much every other part of the state, that has been what we've seen from our government, which is why I'm so proud to live here. But it is not a traditional time, which means that us as community leaders, elected officials, whatever you may be, we need to reevaluate our notions of law enforcement's responsibility. And I was on a radio show where I was talking with actually a fellow candidate about ICE, and he said that we obviously need to curtail ICE because we need to make sure that, people are protected, that we don't have the secret police patrolling our streets. But also we need to protect ICE agents' mental health, because when they're allowed to wear a mask, they're allowed to commit atrocities. And that's going to weigh on them in the future. I don't think that's where our priority should be. Just like I think we need to be encouraging the National Guard, anyone who is deployed to terrorize a city, to not follow an unlawful order. You signed an oath to protect the American people from enemies, domestic and abroad. You need to follow that oath. And we can't pretend that anything that is being committed is okay because it comes from one agency or another. The best thing we can do to protect our troops is ensure that they don't have to break their oath, that they are not abusing American citizens in the name of a fascist. The best thing we can do to quote unquote protect ICE agents is make sure we don't have ICE agents, that they are not allowed to run roughshod over our cities, to protect the people over masked men who we have no idea who they are. I have been at that facility for 6 weeks in a row. I have seen 2 badges the entire time I was there. And I have
Let me ask you this. What this question came up just right on that point. Someone asked, would you be for advocating for the state to bring state level charges against these individuals, whether they are federal agents or not? Would you ask the Illinois AG to do that?
Absolutely. I have watched as ICE agents come into work, because we usually get there pretty early to bear witness to deportations. Almost every car has an out-of-state plate.
Yeah.
I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how that functions, but it's worth noting. And I have watched as Broadview police just stand by as we are abused, as we are beaten, as we are tear gassed. A car, an ICE agent driving into work as we were walking across a crosswalk, just started driving into protesters for yards, like probably the length of a football field. And then they shot them in the back with pepper balls. And I looked at an officer and I said, "You just let a car run over us." And he said, "No, I didn't. It happened 5 seconds ago. I was there. You were there. You cannot dissuade us of the notion that you are collaborating." And so I'm grateful, that we have that any action is being taken to make sure ICE doesn't have total control, but we need a new strategy. We need to be making an effort to protect protesters, to protect detainees, and to get investigators into that facility as soon as humanly possible. Because the Trump administration is just pushing the envelope further and further. There's this gate at the Broadview facility that ICE agents put up the week after that video that came out of me being thrown to the ground. It's an unlawful gate. It's a fire hazard. The fire department has ordered it to come down. And the solution hasn't been tearing it down. It's putting up concrete barricades to create a free speech zone, which its very existence implies that everywhere else is a non-free speech zone.
Yeah. This administration and their fabulous propaganda, okay, that you and I, in some degree, were subjected to in our former lives. I was telling my audience how I used to believe that Antifa was actually a thing. And that God forbid, Fox News actually educates.
You've got your card, right? You've got your punch card yes, for every protest you've been
my
to.
Membership, my George membership. I pay my dues, Kat. I pay my dues. But I used to think it was actually a thing, an actual organization, these boogeymen with real, violent leadership. And God forbid Fox News, with the crosses on their necks and their phony Christianity and patriotism, actually educate their audience about what Antifa means: anti-fascism, anti-oppression, anti-xenophobia.
Anti-fascism. I don't know how to explain grammar to you, but guess what that makes you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Makes you fascist. But they're trying to create, obviously, and this goes back to the conversation about treason, they want to create chaos. They want violence. I want to end on this note. We've seen so many. I've been on the street protesting myself since early January. I have organized and spoken at some of the largest protests in this country. I have not once seen anybody in our group be violent. And also on top of that, I have seen almost no counter protesting, with the exception of some comical attempts to derail some smaller protests. These are 100% peaceful protests. And I know that your protest, the people on your side that are there advocating for human rights and for the people detained by ICE are not violent, are not provoking violence or agitating. But yet that is what they are trying. That is what they are hoping for. That is what they are looking for. One tiny little incident where they can pull people out. I know people who are very close to our movement who were arrested this weekend on false pretenses. This is, of course, happening all over the country. They are looking to provoke violence and create circumstances that would justify invocation of the Insurrection Act or martial law in this country. And just over the weekend, I've seen out of Chicago these beautiful videos of de-escalation, of not because we need it, but just to broadcast who we are and what our intentions are. Do you think this is a good idea? I think it's a great idea.
I think it's awesome. We have been, at these Broadview protests where we are, beaten and gassed and shot. I bring my knitting and I knit on the ground. Someone like Songs for Liberation comes and they sing songs. ICE actually shot one of their guitars with a rubber bullet and destroyed the entire guitar.
Wow.
But I try to stress to people, like, this is what we are. We are peaceful. We have songs and signs and chants. In my case, knitting. They have guns and they are using them.
Yeah.
And also, if someone is encouraging you to be violent, to escalate, they're either a fed or an idiot. I just want to stress that. If someone is in your comments saying you should bring a gun to the next protest, don't. You are jeopardizing not just yourself, but the people around you and the detainees in that facility if you're protesting ICE. If someone says, hey, don't you want to throw something at an agent? Don't. You are jeopardizing not just your safety, but the safety of everyone around you and the people that can be impacted by this. This administration wants violence, and we cannot give it to them. Plain and simple. Part of the reason that video of me being thrown to the ground resonated with so many people is I wasn't doing anything. I was completely unarmed. I had some conservatives that were like, she's wearing a mask, of course. And it's like, yeah, because we were being tear gassed. If you want to change public opinion, if you want to be on the right side of history, and if you want to make effective change, we have to do it in the best ways we know how. And that's by working together, being nonviolent, and standing with each other. If you can't make it to a protest or you're worried about it, consider dropping by some water or even Dawn dish soap. That's a great thing. If people get pepper balled, you can put it all over your clothes and it gets the effects right off. These are little things we can do to support each other. Go buy a whistle, or if you have a 3D printer, 3D print a bunch and leave them in your local coffee shop. Blow them if you see ICE. There are little things all of us can do, and we have to do them if we want to beat them.
Okay. I know I said that was the last question, but I have to ask you one more.
Please.
And I'm going to put you on the spot, but I don't think this is going to be a hard one for you. If you get elected to Congress, Kat, will you commit to filing an article of impeachment against Donald Trump?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Love that. Kat Abughazaleh, running for Illinois' 9th congressional district. Most importantly, she's actually doing the work as she is running for this seat. She is living the motto for our show, Stand Out. And it's my pleasure to meet her today. Thank you so much for joining me, Kat.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you want to learn more about my campaign, you can go to catforillinois.com.
Excellent. Excellent. And thank you everybody for joining us today on Lights On. As always, you can support this show at thejessicadenson.com/donate and buy merch like that hat and mugs and anything else at thejessicadenson.com. Have a wonderful week. We will see you again soon. And as always, let your light shine.